Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. From flash mobs of parents to overwhelmed cashiers, this tale shows how good intentions can lead to complete pandemonium, all in the name of helping the kids. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Crowdsourcing Chaos, when the community got creative with limits. For background, a PTO is an organized group of parents who support the school. In our case, we did a lot of fundraising to fund things like supplies, school band, field trips, etc. We had a president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, and committee chairs, bake sale, book sale, etc. This story takes place about 20 years ago. Budget cuts had hit our kids' school hard, and the principal approached the PTO looking for help with the across-the-board cuts she was facing. As PTO treasurer, I had a couple meetings with her to review. Eventually, we found the solution. School supplies, paper, pencils, etc., were still a line item in her budget. If the PTO could take over purchase of school supplies, that would allow her to redirect the money into other areas. I was looking into bulk pricing when salvation arrived in the mail in the form of a back-to-school sale flyer. It was from an office supply company whose name was of the method by which a thin strip of metal perforates paper and affixes them. The flyer was loaded with paper, notebooks, glue sticks, and many other things, all for just 10 cents. Unfortunately, there was a limit of 5 per customer. I called the store and spoke with the manager. I explained our situation and asked if we could buy more than 5 per customer. He was absolutely fantastic. Not only would he do it, but he'd place a special order and leave everything in their bulk boxes to make it easier for us to bring them to school. A few of us showed up in our trucks and minivans on a Saturday. I wrote him the check and thanked him profusely. He even helped us load the stuff into our vehicles. We brought it to the school, and overnight we had a year of school supplies for just a few $1,000s. The next year rolls around, more budget cuts, more plans for the PTO to supply almost all the school supplies. When my flyer arrived, I called and asked for the manager. The old manager had left, and there was a new one. And by new, I mean literally brand new. He'd only been there a couple weeks. Good news, though, he thought it'd be okay. We hung up, and I said I look forward to meeting him on Saturday. We arrived Saturday, and turns out when the new manager informed the district manager of our plan, the DM shut it down. The DM was even there to tell me personally, limits per customer were to be strictly enforced. Cue my plan. There was absolutely no malicious intent, but it had that impact accidentally. I sent an email blast out to all parents explaining the situation. I asked them to arrive on Saturday and Sunday between 12 and 3, and I'd give them a shopping list and would have cash for them when they returned with the items and receipt. I also asked that if they had any of their own purchases to make, to ask for them to be rung up separately to make it easier for reimbursement and storage. I arrived and went inside to the new manager to explain my plan. He understood and apologized for not being able to do it like we had the last year. As it turned out, lots of parents showed up and many brought their kids. Some turned it into a scavenger hunt, so kids were running around buying packages of pencils, notebooks, and glue sticks. There were times that the front of the store was almost a flash mob filled with people filling their carts with limit 5 per customer items for 10 cents each and $5 in total sales. And because people had some of their own purchases, they were asking some things to be rung up separately. I pity those poor cashiers who were unintended victims of our plan. The lines at the register went back into the aisles, and floor staff was constantly having to refill their pop displays. It was absolute bedlam. Parents exited the store where I took their bag. Many refused reimbursement, making this an even better deal for us. And we had a series of minivans making trips to the school to drop everything off and return for more. We would later spend 2 evenings sorting everything out with boxes spread across the floor of the gym. But after 2 days, we were nowhere near how much we would need. I went inside to speak to the poor, exhausted manager, who I was certain was plotting ways to murder me with office supplies, but he was surprisingly nice. He said he'd call his district manager and plead his case. A couple days later, I got a call. I could come in and pick up our bulk order so long as we didn't unleash another flash mob of low-ticket customers. I have all the sympathy in the world for that poor manager, cashiers, and floor staff. They didn't deserve the hell I accidentally unleashed upon them because of their district manager. The best part is how you handled the aftermath. You didn't just roll over when faced with resistance. You adapted and turned the situation into a massive community effort. And our second story. The drunk owner, the Karen, and the locked door showdown. So I used to work at a bar. The owner was a jerk, but he was great to work for. He was a super alcoholic and a great tipper. He'd been permanently banned from every other bar in town, which is why he bought the bar. He had a policy that if he was drinking, he wasn't the owner. So if he got out of hand, we could throw him out, but not 86 or call the cops on him. Now, I also would like to add that all he did was sign the checks. He had nothing to do otherwise with the day-to-day of the bar other than drinking. One morning, I was opening the bar, and typically the doors are unlocked an hour before we opened, so regulars could come in and drink. They knew the bartender would be cleaning and stocking the bar and would just deal with the small wait times to get a drink or refill. The owner came in and didn't want to wait for me to come out of the back, so he went behind the bar and made himself a drink. He then went and sat at the bar, put money on the rubber mat, and when I came out of the back with a few cases of beer, I hear a woman going off on someone who I found out was the guy who signs my checks. She was going off about how horrible he was for drinking on the job and refusing to make her a drink. He simply told her he didn't work there and went back to his drink. When she saw me, she immediately started complaining about him, saying she wanted to speak to the owner or manager. Since I was the only one there, I told her she'd have to deal with me. She went on her tirade about him needing to be fired and then demanded a free drink for his rudeness and unwillingness to help her. I told her that wasn't going to happen as he didn't work there. Then she decided to take it up a notch and said she knew the owner. Cue typical "you'll both be fired" rant, and the owner's shaking his head laughing, which made her madder. I called her bluff and told her to either shut up and order a drink or leave because I have things to do. She got huffy and then demanded a tab, trying to hand me a credit card. I informed her we were cash only, but she was welcome to go pull money out of the ATM near the bathroom. That didn't make her happy, so she decided to stomp out of the bar, saying she'd take her business elsewhere. The owner then asked for my keys and promptly locked the door behind her. As soon as he did that, he came back and said, "I've never met that woman, so you're definitely not fired." We had a good laugh. She did come back about 20 minutes later because there wasn't another bar open and got super pissed when my boss waved and went back to his drink. She banged on the door for about 5 minutes. He then made me put a sign up front on the glass door with the bar hours, and she got in her car and sped off. I luckily never saw her again. I find both the woman in the story and your boss being entitled, but at least your boss knows he's entitled and leaves everything to his employees to deal with as they see fit. And our next story. No means no when my neighbor's party guests took over my driveway. The house across from me recently sold. The prior owners had lived there for nearly 50 years and were absolutely lovely. Their absence has been felt. I hadn't met the new neighbors until recently as they were living there intermittently while doing renovations. Both of our homes are located on a busy street marked with a double yellow line where street parking is technically allowed, but incredibly unsafe due to the high traffic and narrow lanes. My neighbors have a smaller driveway that fits about 6 cars and no real lawn space for overflow parking. My driveway, on the other hand, is a large circular one that could fit 15 to 20 cars, but only has one entrance and exit point, which makes it a bit tricky if blocked. The other day, while grabbing my mail, the new neighbor came over and introduced herself. She was friendly enough, and after some small talk, she asked, "May I ask you a favor?" I laughed and said, "Well, you can ask." She explained that they were hosting a large party the weekend after the 4th of July and were expecting far more guests than their driveway could accommodate. She asked if they could use my driveway for overflow parking since street parking was difficult and unsafe. I politely said, "Sorry, no, it'd block me in. I don't mind if your guests park on the grass strip in front of my fence." The prior owners used it on occasion, and I didn't mind. She hesitated and then said, "Oh, I appreciate that, but that'll only fit about 6 cars. We'll need room for another 10 to 12 cars beyond what we can fit in our driveway." I stayed firm. "I'm sorry, I can't offer you the use of my driveway without it being a significant inconvenience to us. I'm going to have to say no." At this point, her tone shifted. "Well, my guests can park along the sides and back of your driveway so you can still get in and out." I reiterated, "Again, I'm going to have to say no. I'm not comfortable with your guests on my property, especially since it's poorly lit at night. I wouldn't want anyone to trip or get hurt." She started to look visibly frustrated. "Well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't think they can all park on the street." I suggested there are a couple of municipal buildings nearby. You could try calling the town to see if you can use their parking lots for the evening and shuttle people over. Other than that, I'm not sure what to suggest. Parking here can definitely be a challenge. I excused myself and went back inside, thinking that was the end of it. Boy, was I wrong. The weekend rolled around, and by early evening, I noticed a stream of cars pulling up and parking on my grass strip, my driveway, and even partially blocking the entrance and exit point. My initial reaction was disbelief. They clearly didn't take my no seriously. Guests were walking across my property like it was an overflow lot, laughing and chatting as if nothing was wrong. I went over to the neighbor's house and rang the doorbell. When the neighbor answered, I kept my tone civil but firm. "Hi, I notice your guests have parked in my driveway and are blocking my access. I need them moved immediately." She gave me a sheepish smile and said, "Oh, I didn't realize they parked there. I'll ask them to move." I waited a full 30 minutes, but nothing changed. If anything, more cars had arrived and were now completely blocking my driveway. I'd had enough. I called the local tow company, explained the situation, and within an hour, 2 tow trucks rolled up. I stood on my porch as they began hooking up the cars one by one. Guests who were still arriving looked confused as their friends' cars were hauled away. One guest even came running over. "Wait, that's my car. What's going on?" I calmly replied, "Your car's illegally parked on private property. I asked for it to be removed earlier, and no one did anything. It's being towed." The guest tried to argue, but the tow truck driver wasn't having it. "If you got an issue, take it up with the property owner, but your car's hooked, and I'm not unhooking it unless you pay the release fee." The neighbor came running out at this point, visibly panicked. "What are you doing? You didn't need to call a tow truck. I said I'd get them to move." "You had plenty of time to fix this," I said sharply. "I warned you this would be an issue, and you ignored me. This is your problem now." She pleaded with me to stop the towing, but I told her she'd have to pay the tow company directly to release the cars. Several guests were standing around, staring awkwardly at the scene as more cars were hooked up and taken away. By the time the tow trucks were done, half a dozen cars were gone, and the party had noticeably thinned out. Later that evening, my neighbor came over furious. "This was completely unnecessary. You embarrassed me in front of my guests." I responded, "You disrespected my property after I explicitly told you no. I don't know what else you expected. Maybe next time you'll think twice before assuming someone else's property is yours to use." She stormed off, muttering under her breath. While the party guests probably had a miserable night trying to retrieve their cars from the tow yard, I slept peacefully. The best part, the neighbor hasn't so much as looked in my direction since. You were incredibly accommodating by offering the grass strip in front of your fence, which you didn't even have to do. But when someone blatantly ignores boundaries and disrespects your property after you've been crystal clear, that's on them, not you. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.